Greetings gamers, I'm Gav. Let's talk about Enshrouded. Before I hop into Path of Exile's final month of their 3.25 league, I wanted a little break from the top-down ARPG experience, and this game was super cozy and actually a lot of fun starting out. Unfortunately, I got bored pretty quickly and we'll go over why. Enshrouded's a relatively new base building and open world survival game with some ARPG elements to their combat. Sadly, the game was overshadowed by Palworld, which released back in January, just 5 days before Enshrouded came out. By the time Enshrouded launched, Palworld had already taken the internet and the survival genre by storm. Needless to say, the game completely flew under mine and many other people's radar, and it's honestly a great game in its own right. Enshrouded has continued seeing reasonable player numbers throughout its continued development this whole year. Keen Games are the studio behind the project, a games company based out of Germany. This is the first official review on my channel, and the folks over at Keen Games were kind enough to provide me with a copy of Enshrouded to try out and provide feedback. So, here we go. After playing quite a bit over the last few weeks, I can honestly say I enjoyed my time and plan to revisit it in future updates. This review will all be from a solo player perspective, which is pretty important to note, as I feel that the game is designed with the multiplayer experience in mind, where you can play with up to 16 people, allowing you to split the workload and explore different parts of the map or stick together. Enshrouded does a lot of things right for a survival game. Like I said, it didn't fully manage to hook me, but who knows, it may be the perfect game for you. Let's break down how Enshrouded plays at its core and what it's all about, and then I'll get into the good and the bad about the game before wrapping up this short review. Right out of the gate, the character creation leaves a lot to be desired. It's pretty bare bones. To some, this is an immediate turnoff. Others, like myself, don't judge it too harshly, but again, it's pretty lacking even for me. Once your character is made, it's time to enter the world. Enshrouded has a really interesting story, and perhaps as the game evolves, I might come back and cover the lore. Here's the opening cutscene, which I thought was pretty well done to set the stage for the game.
Long ago, a wanderer brought an enthralling gift to the people of Embervale. The elixir. It was a cure, a blessing, a weapon. Once concealed by the ancients, its might had been set free. With it came power, mistrust, and a longing for more. Humanity dug the elixir wells, ripping apart the land and each other to quench their thirst. Elixir and blood, a drop for a drop. But from the depths of the wells, an unforeseen curse crept into Embervale. The Shroud, a ruinous fog which sought only to spread and devour. Facing their downfall, ancients and humans united to forge the Flameborn. Now, your time has come. Awake.
We as a Flameborn of this world awaken and begin our journey with the ultimate goal being to eradicate the Shroud from the land. There's lore books and different discoverable journal entries that continue the depth of the story. You'll find them scattered throughout the massive world on tables or in houses and camps. The lore is fairly expansive and not bad from what I've read so far. There's also a nice UI that stores all of your notes and lore items, allowing for you to go back and read them anytime you'd like, which for obvious reasons, I love when games do this. In Enshrouded, you find yourself doing the typical survival game rotation of gathering, crafting, and exploring. You start with nothing but the ragged clothes on your back and your fists, setting out and punching trees, collecting sticks, rocks, and otherwise, in order to complete quests and objectives. Our first mission as we set out into the world is to build a flame altar. The flame altar is essentially marking your home location and enables building in that area. It also allows you to fast travel back to it, which is really nice. The flame altar is your main quest hub as well and keeps you quite busy. As you level up, explore, and progress through the game, you'll gather the resources necessary to strengthen the flame. Strengthening the flame grants additional global benefits such as attribute bonuses, as well as raising the level of the shroud zones that you can enter and increasing the time that you can spend in the shroud. Or you could completely upgrade the altar, allowing for further building range and expansion of your base. I didn't spend too much time building as I was happy with my little house and preferred exploring over building and crafting. The loop, as stated, is relatively similar to most any survival game. You set out to gather and explore, returning home when your bags are too full or you need to rebuff. The buff I'm referring to is the rested buff, which you should never leave home without. It increases your maximum stamina and stamina regeneration. In order to make your rested buff last longer, you have to raise the comfort level of your home. This is achieved through various housing items like tables, chairs, beds, lighting. The list is quite extensive. As you progress, the comfort level of more advanced items increases as well. My buff was up to nearly 23 minutes, and I imagine it can go quite a bit higher than that. Having it over 20 minutes was nice to knock out some quests and do some exploring before returning back to base. The whole game reminded me a lot of Valheim, but with better moment-to-moment gameplay and a bit more depth out of the box. The food and water system aren't nearly as punishing as other survival games. Instead, they provide active buffs to your character, with each different food granting a different bonus. There are other Flameborn throughout the world to find and summon to your home as well. These others act as the crafters of the game, rather than the usual crafting stations that survival games use traditionally. There's the blacksmith, the hunter, alchemist, carpenter, and farmer. These crafters have quests for us to do as well to continue our exploration of the world, with some quests unlocking their ability to craft better items. Examples would be finding the spindle for the hunter, in order to unlock the ability to make linen out of flaxseed, or the kiln for the carpenter, to be able to make bricks from clay, things along those lines. To progress, each tier of crafting requires the next tier of materials, which you begin to find as you venture further into the world. So I felt that the crafting progression was fairly linear with the game's difficulty increase, which is good. Enshrouded contains a massive Skyrim-like map, which has points of interest and quests scattered throughout it. Honestly, the map was a lot bigger than I expected, and I only just scratched the surface. The movement in Enshrouded is quite unique as well. You'll find yourself gliding from a high tower or mountain cliff towards your destination, or swinging around with your grappling hook. The glider and grappling hook are also very useful tools for the various jumping puzzles that we find in dungeons and vaults during our exploration. The combat in Enshrouded is relatively well crafted, and has a bit more depth to it than the average game in this genre, at least that I've played. It's a much more active combat style which has you evading, parrying, or blocking attacks, and using special abilities at pivotal moments if you're specced into them. Which brings me to the last major feature. The game has a relatively large skill tree, allowing for a personalized build for your character based on how you want to play. I was using a legendary two-handed mace I found that had 10% lifesteal on it, and 2 rings, each with 5% lifesteal, which added up to a total of 20% of my damage leached as life every time I hit something, and it seemed pretty OP. I then specced into two-handed passives on the tree, and a few other critical skills like double jump. I felt pretty invincible in most fights. Let's talk about the good and the bad. The things Enshrouded does well have to be the simplicity yet depth to their base building system. Unfortunately, I didn't spend much time decorating my house, let alone building an entire town, which is actually possible in this game. Therefore, I didn't fully get to interact with the building side of the game, but from what I could see available to craft and how well things were snapping when I was building my house, the base building in Enshrouded was extremely satisfying. Another honorable mention would have to be its unique movement and traversal. The grappling hook and glider as staples for traversing the map was a very cool touch. The quests provided by both the Flame Altar and the crafters were solid, and kept my exploration goal-oriented, which I personally like. Questing allowed for a solid feeling of linear progression, and highlighted points of interest on the map to explore further. It felt to me like there was always something you could be doing, which leads me to the bad. Now, I'm not trying to sound too negative here. Like I said, Enshrouded has a lot of potential. Let's start with the map. It may be gigantic, but the exploration gets very samey, and even some of the towns, caves, and buildings start looking identical after a few hours of running around. Unlocking towers and the ability to put down more flame altars for fast travel just wasn't enough to make the exploration feel good or efficient. It's fine to have a massive explorable world, but it shouldn't feel like a chore to get around, or to get back to where you were. For example, after having to return home to dump your inventory or log off for the day, if you were in the middle of nowhere exploring and have no fast travel around, you now have to get back there next time on foot. To add on to this, the map isn't procedural. The map on your first playthrough will be exactly the same as your second, your third, and so on. The towns, caves, outposts, and camps, everything will be in the same location always. This kind of hurts the replay value a lot for me. I'm not sure if they plan to release new and varied maps, but that would be a great way to keep different playthroughs feeling fresh. Kind of tying into the exploration, the traversal and terrain in this game were both kind of a nightmare for me. When you aren't gliding or using your grappling hook, which most of the time you really aren't, you have to run everywhere on foot with a very tedious stamina bar. It was a running simulator for far too much of my playtime while questing and exploring the map. The rested buff is mandatory to even function or be out running around and exploring. What's supposed to feel like a bonus instead feels like a necessity, as stamina in this game is a hot commodity, which keeps you coming back to your house more and more frequently, and then like I said, you get stuck in that loop where you just have to return to where you were on foot because there's no fast travel around. It felt like I was fighting the stamina bar more than actual monsters, and it was the cause of a lot of constant frustration, given the amount of exploring and traveling that there is to do in this game. And in the same vein as traversal, if I didn't take the double jump ability, I'd literally be pulling my hair out, trying to deal with the elevation changes throughout the map. I personally think double jump should just be the default. The ARPG style combat also leaves a lot to be desired. As one of the crown jewels of the game, it's pretty basic. Your character feels extremely floaty and stiff. You often find yourself animation locked and unable to move when you want to, which makes most fights unfun, particularly boss fights with actual mechanics to dodge. But in most cases, the combat was just too easy, which removes the potential excitement for that next encounter. Maybe it was just my legendary two-handed mace or the lifesteal, but to credit Keen Games, there are harder difficulties that you can play on in Enshrouded. Mine was set to normal for this playthrough, so maybe that was why it was too easy. All in all, the grind was too much to be a cozy single-player experience, and the diversity of the content was just too little. Enshrouded is an all-around fun and innovative survival game, and I look forward to future updates and seeing how it evolves. Keen Games has definitely placed their own twist on the genre. It just seems like a game that's more well suited for the multiplayer experience. If you have a group of friends interested in trying it out, I say go for it. You can find the Steam link for it down in the description. As a solo player doing all the work, my time felt very limited. It was a bit grindy. I absolutely love survival games in general when not playing Diablo-style ARPGs or MMOs. I'm just a little disappointed that the tedium and repetition of the gameplay loop drove me away so quickly. I hope Keen Games can get some of these aspects shored up and have some cool content additions and features in store for Enshrouded. I hope this review and look into the game was insightful for any of you interested. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more documentaries, reviews, and lore, and I'll see you all in the next one. Farewell.